Will you make some, introduction, or shall I start from the very beginning? All right. So, yeah, waiting for your final signal. Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Vasiliy Sabirov. I'm Lead Analyst and co-founder at DevToDev.com. And yes, I'm the professional game analyst, and I'd like to share my experience with you tonight. I work in DevToDev. DevToDev is the analytical service, the company based in Vilnius, Lithuania. And we are the team of professional game analysts who develop the service of analysts for of analytics for free-to-play game developers. And today I'd like to share my experience about the algorithm, how to analyze the game, how to optimize the game, how to find the problem of the game and the points of its growth. So I will provide pretty separate, pretty concrete algorithm, how to start, when to finish, and I hope that my ideas will help you to improve your games also. So let's start with the following situation. You are the game developer, and you are developing your game, and it's already launched. I usually work with the games that are already launched, and everything seems to be okay, but the investor is going to cut the budget. The investor wants to increase the financial effect of your game, of your project. So you need to find the ways how to make it. You need to find some ideas how to make your game better. And what shall you do? Yes, you will have to analyze your game deeper. And tonight I will explain how deeper should you go. I like the parallel that analytics is like the remedy for your project. So analyst is like the doctor for your project. If you have some problems with your health, you're going to the doctor makes some measurements. After that, there goes some decision, for example, some pills, and after that you come to the doctor again. The same thing is with analytics. You start with the measurements, you measure some basic or not basic metrics. If everything is clear, you'll make a decision. What shall you do, how to improve your game? If not, you'll have to measure additional KPI, let's say some game economy parameters, and after that you have to go to the point one. That's the basic cycle of data-driven game development. And yes, let's start from the very beginning, from the level one. The level one is about major KPI. Major KPI of the game are about the size of the game. Those are quantitative parameters of the game. Of course, the main parameter is the revenue or gross. The gross is the amount of money that came from the market, from the players to the market, and revenue is the gross without the market commission. Also, another interesting KPI is DAO, VAU, or MAU. It's the set of metrics which are called daily active users, weekly active users, and monthly active users. And what important to know that MAU is not the sum of 30 DAOs. MAU is the unique number of users that visited your game within a month. Users online, the metric which is pretty interesting for PvP projects, the maximum number of users online at the separate day. And another quantitative metric is the new users, the installs, the incoming traffic that comes to you. You can also divide it by paid traffic or organic, but anyway, the total number of new users is the important metric which describes the incoming flow of users into your project. And yes, let's explain the following example. There are two lines. The red line is the revenue, and the blue line is the new users. And the blue line is put on the additional vertical axis. And until some time, everything goes pretty well. The number of new users is going up. The revenue amount is also going up. But then something happened. And if you use only the metric of quantity, such metrics as revenue, DAU, MAU, you will not have a chance to understand what happened inside. And there could be some different reasons what can happen, and we need to go deeper to understand it better. So the second level of analysis is the metric of quality. The first level was the metric of quantity. This level is the metric of quality. And those metrics are very important because they describe the quality of the game itself. Maybe the most important metric of quality for the project is the retention, and I will explain it to you. Day one retention is the share of users who visited the game on one day after the first visit. So usually the day of the day one retention is the metric which shows the reaction of users on the interface, on the tutorial, on the first session. Usually it's not about the game itself, it's about the visual style. The day 7 retention is the share of users who visit the game on the day 7 after the first visit, and usually describe the reaction of users on basic gameplay, on the core gameplay. If user likes the game, then he or she will come to the game again. And another metric is the day 28 retention. It shows the share of users who come to the game on the day 28 after the first visit, and usually it shows the reaction of users on the meta game. If user is still active after 1 month, then it means that the game is really important for that user. These three metrics are called the classic retention, but we can also calculate the rolling retention. For example, if in a classic retention formula we calculate the number of users who visited on day 7, in rolling retention formula we will calculate the users who visit the game on day 7 or later. So it means that rolling retention is always higher than the classic retention. But the rolling retention is harder to calculate because every new session will initiate the recalculation of the retention. Another retention metric is the lifetime. Lifetime is the average number of days that user is active in the game. And the longer the lifetime is, the longer the user is alive in the game. So you need to optimize your lifetime. And there is also one metric which is about the retention. It's called sticky factor, and I like this metric very much because it has a strong correlation with the monetization. It calculates as DAU divided by MAU, as the number of daily active users divided by number of monthly active users. So if you imagine, the ideal game when all of the users come every day. So, and let's say every day we have 1,000 users. So DAU will be 1,000, MAU will be also 1,000, and sticky factor will be equal to 100%. That's the optimal value of sticky factor. And now if we imagine the ideal worst game in the world, so no one returned to that game, it means that if we have MAU which is equal to 1,000 users, then it means that the DAU will be 33 users per day. And if we calculate it, we will have the 3.3%. It's the minimum possible value of sticky factor. So yes, the sticky factor is the metric which is somewhere between 3.3% and 100%. Usually for financially successful games, it's about 15 to 20%, maybe higher. It shows, the stickiness of the game, the repeatability, replayability of the game. Another level of metrics of quality is the monetization. ARPU is the average revenue per user. It's calculated as a number of the revenue amount divided by audience. For example, if you calculate the ARPU on some separate day, we will take the daily revenue divided by DAU, and we will calculate the daily ARPU, or it's also called the ARPDAU. Another metric is ARPPU, average revenue per paying user. In this metric, we divide it by number of paying users. So if user is payer, how much does he or she pay? The paying conversion is the share of users who prefer to pay, and usually the paying share of free-to-play games is about 1%. That's the median value of mobile free-to-play games. It's only 1%. So if you increase it on by 2%, it means that we will increase the revenue of the game twice. And another metric is LTV. LTV is the lifetime value. It shows how much money the average user brings you within the whole lifetime. And the LTV is important metric because it needs to be higher than CPI. Because if you pay, let's say, $3 per user, then it means that LTV should be higher than $3 if we want our game to be financially successful. So yes, let's make a case study. Our revenue is falling. Why? Why can that happen? And I offer the simple map of metrics to you. Here's how it looks like. It's all of the arrows means that this metric can change the value of this metric. For example, you came to the work on Monday morning and you checked the revenue for yesterday, and you found out that your revenue decreased by 10%. You want to understand what happened. And so what shall we do? This metric can help us with this investigation. Usually we can calculate the revenue as the DAU multiplied by ARPU. So first we will check DAU, then we will check ARPU. Let's imagine that DAU is okay. Then the problem is in ARPU. The ARPU is also the product of paying share and ARPPU. And for example, the paying share was stable yesterday, but the problem is in ARPPU. So the revenue falls. In our case, the revenue falls on 10% because ARPPU falls on 10%. For example, if our discount was not very successful, if it's not convert new users to payers, but those users who usually pay less that day, then it means that the revenue can be less by 10%. Another level is not about metrics. Another level of analysis is about events and funnels. When you work with the free-to-play games, you usually work with the analytic systems. They could be different analytic systems, and I work in DevToDev. That's one of the systems. In these systems, you will have to analyze the player's behavior. What does the player do? And you need to send the event structure to the analytical system. What shall you send? First of all, you need to mark the key user's actions, such as payments, share buttons, and churn. Then you need to find its neighborhood. For example, what was before the payment? What will be after the payment? Let's say if user wants to pay, then first the user have to go to the shop, then to open this word, to read the description, then to press buy, and then to press confirm. So we will have to send all that events to the analytical system. And also you have to ask yourself, where can user have the problems? And my recommendation is also, when you send something to the analytical system, pay attention to your tutorial and try to analyze it in details, because tutorial is even the small change in tutorial can lead to the huge change of your retention monetization. So you can find some typical problems in tutorial and to fix it. It will be cheap, it will be fast, but it can work well on your retention monetization. And here's the case. In the screenshot from DevToDev, this report called Tutorial Steps. And this is the long funnel about your tutorial. And we see that there are 2 steps that have the problems with the tutorial. Step 2 and step 16. In this separate case, both of the steps are invisible to the player. So there was some uploading of scenes, uploading of characters, uploading of town on this level. So these steps are very long for the user, and the user doesn't want to wait for such a long time. So yes, in this report we understand that we need to make our tutorial to be more technically faster. Another level is the game structure. Yes, we already analyzed the basic metrics, the quality metrics, the behavior, and now we need to dig deeper. We will explore the game structures. What does usually the game consist of? Usually the game consists of levels, game locations. For example, this is the locations in the game, and the level is usually the level of player. When we say the elf of level 80, it means that in this case it will be level. The level is the share of experience of the player, and this is the location. Also, you can analyze the loops, core loop, metagame loop, and so on. And how to analyze it? You will have to analyze the conversions to the levels, between the levels, the complexity of every level, the churn of every level and location, the revenue of every level and location, and any other additional parameters such as stars per level, stars per location, or health points per successful attempt of passing the location. All of these parameters needs to be analyzed. And yes, here's one of the examples. How can we analyze it in our system? Yes, this is the report called users by level. Here we can calculate any basic metric of users by level. How many users passed the level or still remaining on the level, what's the average revenue per user on any level, and so on. Another report is about the location. For example, it will work well for match 3 games. So here we can calculate the complexity of a location, the stars earned per successful or unsuccessful attempts, and also the gross per every location. So that can be useful if you want to balance the complexity, if you want, let's say, to create the new complexity curve. Yeah, another case study from my practice is the following. Players got stuck on level 7. Why? Well, in our case, we have calculated the share of users on every level, and yes, we found out that a lot of users prefer to be stuck on level 7. They decreased their win rate on this level. Why? This level was not so hard. And so we analyze it deeper, we calculate some additional metrics, and we found out that the level 7 in this game was, the latest level of the easiest part of the game. The level 8 was the beginning of hardcore levels. And so a lot of users, they prefer to be on level 7 than on level 8. So they were afraid of getting to level 8 because the gap of complexity between level 7 and level 8 was too high. That was a mistake in the matchmaking. And yes, we had to fix that mistake. And of course, yes, we fixed it, and the number of players who stuck on this level decreased. So all of them go further on next levels. And the next level is the game economy. If we are working with the free-to-play games, yes, we are working with the game economy. What does it mean? In free-to-play games, you also work with some currencies. Hard currencies, soft currencies, and so on. And yes, we track spendings, earnings, purchases, the number of money on account, the accumulation of the player. And we analyze the in-app purchases. What does user buy? By hard currency or by soft currency. And we divide the in-app purchases by categories, by levels, and by prices. We analyze it in complex, and yes, we can find the problems of game economy. And here is one of the examples. How can the report look like? Here you can see that there are 2 currencies in the game, and there are a lot of different in-app purchases, and we can see the structure of in-app purchases of these in-apps by level. Another example is the following. This report shows the structure of gross, the structure of money by player segments. And in this case, we use the segmentation by days from install till payment date. So the users who mark blue are the users who are only 1 day active in the game. The users who marked violet, purple, it's 2 to 7, and so on. To go further, so we can see that the new coming users are not so important for us because most of the payments go from elder users. And for example, in one of the games, we can find out that the new update increased the number of new paying users, but decreased the number of old paying users. And that was a mistake because usually the average amount of payment for new users is lower than for the older users. So we had to go back to the previous version of that game. And yes, another case study for you, how to increase payments on levels 20 to 25. Well, I can provide you with the algorithm. First of all, you need to analyze the structure of purchases on that level. What do users prefer? Users prefer on this level. After that, you will have some structure of purchases on that level, and this is the signal for you to make some targeted offers, to make some targeted discounts. You can check for every user if the user has this in app already or not, and you can offer it with some discount, and you will increase the payment on that user, and it will allow you to decrease the average number of currency on the user's accounts. So yeah, here is the basic algorithm. We start with a major KPI, then we go to the metric of quality, then we go to the events and funnels. The next level is the game structure, and the final level is the game economy. But that's not everything. There's always one additional dimension. It's called segmentation. Segmentation allows you to find insights about your game, not only for the whole set of users, but also for some specific cohort. And I will show you some example. For example, we can segment users by frequent sessions or rare sessions. Also, we can segment users by paying users and non-paying users. And if we multiply these two types of segmentation, we will have 4 segments: frequent sessions, paying users; frequent sessions, non-paying users; rare sessions, paying users; and rare sessions, non-paying users. The sum of these 4 segments will be equal to your DAO, or to your MAU. Okay. Every this segment will have to use some different levers, some different ways to communicate with you, some different motivations. And so, yeah, that's the usual and the basic way to understand your audience, to calculate the proportions of your users between that segments. Another type of segmentation is, it works only for the paying users. It's called RFM analysis. R is the mark of recency. For example, we can put the highest mark, the mark of 5, to the paying user if the last payment was 1 day ago. You can put 4 if the last payment was 1 week ago, and so on. And you can put 1 if the last payment was 1 year ago or later. The same situation is frequency. We can put 5 if the user pays frequently, and we can put 1 if the user pays rarely or has only 1 payment. And the monitoring, we can put 5 if the user preferred to pay the highest amounts, and we can put 1 if the user preferred to pay smallest amounts. And so we have different marks for 3 parameters for paying users. And so we can create some sub-segments of RFM analysis. For example, the number of users who pay frequently, this is by frequency, and how recent was the last payment. For example, here in our case, we can see that most of the users, they used to pay frequently, but their last payment was a long time ago. And if you calculate the number of money from that segments, we found out that those users used to bring you the most of the money, most of your money. So it means that on some day in the past, there were some problems and users stopped paying. You will have to find the problem. You will have to find the reason in the past, to find reason for that user. So why did they stop paying? And you'll have to fix it. Another huge segment here is the number of users who pay only one payment, but also, that was also a long time ago. So yeah, in this case, the problem is in the past. You will have to find it for some weeks ago. Another type of segmentation is the Richard Bartle specification. It works for MMOs, games, and it works on motivation. For example, the killers are the users who prefer the social interaction and who prefer to win on every user. The achievers are the users who prefer not to interact with another users, but they prefer to make as many achievements as possible. The explorers are the users who also are not social and they like to explore the world. And the socializers are the users who, for example, who is playing in the clans, who wants to use the social mechanics. And these are the 4 different segments of users. And the rule is that if you develop a MMO game, you need your game to be fun for every of these 4 segments. Another type of segmentation, you can segment users by country, by language, by device, by platform, let's say mobile versus console games, by traffic channels. If you buy traffic, you must use the segmentation by traffic channels because it will allow you to save your money. By events, for example, the users who passed the tutorial versus the users who skipped the tutorial. And yes, you can multiply some different types of segmentation. For example, you can multiply country by traffic channels and have some different ways of segmentation. So yes, here is the algorithm. We start with the major KPI, then we go to the metrics of quality. After that, we analyze the events and funnels. After that, we analyze the structure of the game and the game economy. And yes, we always need to use the segmentation because it allows us to have more insights about our game and about our players' motivation. And yes, this is the algorithm which can help you to find the bottleneck, to find the points of growth of your game. And yes, I hope that if you use it, you can be happy as the Lebowski on this GIF picture. And to sum up, I just want to say a couple of words about DevToDev. We are the full cycle analytics solution for game developers. So we work with the game on every stage, starting from a user acquisition and then to the monetization, to the game analysis. And yes, we work with all data sources and platforms, so we can put your data and we can combine the insightful reports for you. And yes, I hope that my speech today was interesting for you, and now I will be happy to answer your questions. Yes, I can hear you well.
So I just turned on my mic for the stream as well. I have 2 questions personally already. The first one would be, how is the rolling retention used? Is it something that would be shown as a metric to a publisher, for example, or a business partner, or is it still something that you would use as a metric for internal analysis? Like how is the rolling retention used in comparison to the regular retention?
Yes, that's the good question. Sometimes the classic retention is not enough for you. Let's say if the user on day 7, if the day 7, let's say it's Saturday, and not all of the users prefer to play on Saturday, and maybe the user, is going to the grandmother to the village on Saturday, and in this case, the user will not calculate in the classic type of retention, but this user will come back on Monday, and yes, if we calculate the rolling retention, we will calculate this user. So this is the most long-term metric of activity of the user. Yes, it's harder to calculate, but it's much fairer than the classical retention if we're talking about the availability of game to retain users. And yes, sometimes I know some cases when the game developer use rolling retention as the metric when communicate with the investors. But I think that most of the investors understand the difference between classic retention and rolling retention. So please beware.
The second question would be, you mentioned, you talked a little bit about the tutorial system and the steps that where people fall off and how to analyze it. So I had the question of, would it be better to design the game in a way that it has multiple shorter tutorial interactions in total for the player, so more like discrete steps for having tutorials, or would it make more sense to make a longer tutorial system with having some periodic gameplay loops in between?
Well, I think that depends on the game genre. For example, if we are talking about the most complex game, let's say, well, for example, the Gwent from CD Projekt Red is one of the favorites of the mobile market at the moment. And yes, they have pretty long tutorial because there are a lot of mechanics and you need to understand it. And for example, if the game is hyper casual, yes, or casual, you don't have to use the very long tutorial. I think that the good practice is when the first levels, I mean real levels, not the tutorial levels, also explain you some new mechanics. And my suggestion here is not to use only the tutorial conversion, but use it in a complex with the, let's say, day 1 retention, day 7 retention, and day 7 ARPU. Because sometimes you can increase the tutorial conversion, but you can decrease any other metrics. Let's say if we replace the tutorial by only one picture, yes, we will increase the tutorial conversion, but I guess we will decrease in any further metrics. So we need to analyze it together with all that metrics. Yes, definitely. For example, yeah, the hardcore games such as Darkest Dungeon or something, and they need to have some smooth engagement, some smooth tutorial.
Okay, one more question. So what about for premium games? If you have a short premium game, depending like a few hours or something, then necessarily these players don't have to come back to the game to keep. So they like the retention mechanics are completely different there. Is analytics and like using analytics to analyze where users fall off or come in would still be a good idea?
Well, what I said is mostly about free-to-play games. But if we're talking about premium games, I think we need to analyze the three things. First thing is the session length and the session's regularity, how regular our user prefer to play, if you're talking about the metrics. We don't need to use the retention, but we have to use the events, we have to use the funnels. For example, the first session is important for both free-to-play and premium games. We need to understand how our game engage players to play. And the third thing to analyze, the third way of analysis is the play testing, is the measure of players' emotions. I think that for premium games, the play testing in some early access, some early test groups are much important than the qualitative and quantitative analytics. So yes, if you need to make the analytic flow for premium game, then yes, first of all, analyze the first session, then track the session length and what the session usually includes. And yes, don't forget about the play tests to track the player's emotion, to track their fun, to understand which points are bring most fun of the user, for the player. Yes. I think both of the cases can be useful, because in the first case, when you ask them in the game, you can use some kind of qualitative analytics. You can build some funnels, some charts, and in the second ways, when you're talking face to face, you can read the emotions from dialogue. So yes, I prefer to use the both ways, but usually as the game analyst, I prefer the face-to-face analytics in this case. But you need to switch off your empathy on this stage.
Okay, then we have another question. Are there any other similar platforms or techniques to learn more about high-level analytics or kinds of trends in these kinds of games?
Well, yes, there are some different analytic platforms. We are not alone in this market. Yes, we are one of the maybe most popular on the systems on the European market. But anyway, yeah, there are some systems. If you want to read something, then I can suggest you to subscribe to our educational center. It's called edu, like education, .devtodev.com. And there we put all of our webinars, all of our articles, and even all of our books and educational courses about game analytics. There you can find the free course of the game analytics. There are 16 lectures with tasks. And yes, you can pass it. You can even win some certificates, and that's absolutely free without in-app purchases.
And I think that's it for the questions. So yes, thank you again for attending, and thank you for the interesting talks. I hope that this is quite useful.
Thank you very much. If you want, you can write me the email or find me on Facebook or in LinkedIn. I am always happy to talk about game analytics.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, like, if people can reach out to you, then there are the links on the screen. There's the email, Facebook, LinkedIn. So if you have any questions, they can reach out to you.
Yes, and I think I will send the link on the presentation to you so you can share with all the listeners.
Yep, then I will put it up on our YouTube channel and also in the events.
Okay, great. Okay. Great, that's not a problem.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.